Hey everyone, and welcome to another Feral Druid video. Today I want to cover what's new for Feral in 11.1, what you can anticipate, how it's looking, and some builds and rotation guides for you as well. So the areas that I want to cover are what's new in 11.1, the hero talents, the single target rotation, the AOE rotation, talents, and then how it's looking in terms of just damage in general. There will be timestamps below, so if you want to jump to those specific sections, please feel free to. And lastly, just an update for you, I will be streaming going forward Retail World of Warcraft Monday, Thursday, and Fridays. So you can check out the schedule and come and join the stream for those days if you want to see some WoW content. So very briefly, I'll get into some of the stats Enchants consumes and discuss the tier set. So in terms of stat weights, you want crit, mastery, and haste. In terms of exactly what amount of each, this is just going to be a sim situation, and it's going to be very item level dependent and everything. Depends on all of the rest of your gear. But in general, you're aiming for crit and mastery. Haste is also fantastic. Verse is fine, but it's like the worst of our stats. But it's still fine. In terms of consumes, you've got Flask of Alchemical Chaos, Tempered Potion, Algari Mana Oil, and Beladar's Bounty. In terms of enchants, obviously you got like Avoidance and all that kind of stuff, but the main ones that are going to affect your damage are Crystalline Radiance, Radiant Power, and Stormbound Armor Kit. Now in terms of your tier set and how it works, your spells and abilities have a chance to activate a winning streak, increasing the damage of your Ferocious Bite, Rip, and Primal Wrath by 3%, stacking up to 10 times. So that's just all of your finishers. Your abilities have a chance to increase the damage of your finishers. Ferocious Bite, Rip, and Primal Wrath have a 15% chance to remove winning streak. However, your Apex Bites are exempt from this. So you might be in a situation where you get an Apex proc and you're going to refresh your Rip. You might be at high stacks, so you can Apex Bite first and then Rip, which will mean that you're going to get the damage benefit on both. That Rip might cause you to lose your stacks. Just little things like that. Then your Foresight is when you consume Apex Predator's Craving. Become a big winner, dealing 800,000 damage, more or less, to Apex Predator's primary target and increasing the damage of your periodic effects by 16% for 6 seconds. So this is very important why you want to pre-spread Rake in scenarios and have all your bleeds up and active on targets by the time that you're looking to use your Apex Bite, and then looking to send your cooldowns, because you want all of that damage in that window to be enhanced. So this is why multi-dotting is very important and why you don't want your bleeds to ever drop off, because you want those Apex procs as much as possible from your Primal Wrath Rips or on single target from your Rip. And that's a lot of primary target damage. So we have decent funnel, and then this is just going to add into that. Feral's looking strong in 11.1, but not much has really changed rotationally or talent-wise. If you haven't played Feral before, if you're here for a quick refresher, this is definitely a video for you. For hero talents, you can currently play either for Mythic Plus and Raid, DOTC, or Wildstalker, absolutely fine. DOTC is favored in Mythic Plus because of its burst potential and strong overall damage. You can still play Wildstalker. I definitely did in a lot of 11.0. In Raid, we might see some scenarios where Wildstalker is better initially, and then DOTC is going to be replacing Wildstalker once speed clears are in the mix. That's what happened in this season. But because of this new tier set, there's potential that maybe you just take DOTC the whole time, because I think it has a slightly preferred playstyle with Apex and the tier set with DOTC. In terms of the single target rotation, so this would be with your Raid build, with your Raid talents, which we will show on screen soon. But you're going to want to Stealth, Rake, Brutal Slash, and then Thrash. Then you would Brutal Slash to 5 combo points. Then you can Adaptive Swarm. You can Berserk Tiger Fury and Rip. You can then Feral Frenzy if you're running it. Bite. Brutal Slash. Bite again. And then you can Convoke. Then you'd look to be reapplying your bleeds and generate Blood Talons as required. So don't reapply your Rip unless you have Blood Talons available. And then you're just biting when Rip is healthy. At this point, you're just maintaining your bleeds, raking when required, re-ripping when required, re-thrashing when required, and then using Adaptive Swarm. But that's the overall gist of single target. I will do a more in-depth guide on this later down the line. For your AOE rotation, this can be a little bit finicky and is very dependent moment by moment, but generally you're looking to rake, brutal slash, thrash, just like you would on single target. But then you're looking to rake spread to 5 combo points, and then primal wrath. Continue to rake spread to 5 combo points if applicable. If the mobs are 100% rake saturation, then you can brutal slash instead. Then you would berserk, tiger fury, primal wrath. Then you can bite, convoke. Then you would bite or primal wrath, depending on a couple different scenarios. If you have blood talons available and your rips are low duration, anything under 3 or 4 seconds, then you can primal wrath. If you don't have blood talons, you can do a nice little trick, which is to brutal slash. I can get into more of that later, but all you need to know is that you've got a good chance of generating your blood talons from that one brutal slash. If you do get blood talons, then you can primal wrath. If not, you can look to bite, or if your rips are still healthy, then you can just bite instead. You never want your primal wrath rips to fall off of the target, so even if you have to use a non-blood talons primal wrath, then just go for it whilst you're generating blood talons. You can generate blood talons with rake, brutal slash, and thrash, and then you refresh your primal wrath when under 4 seconds remaining. During this time, you will have gotten quite a few apex bites, I would imagine, so use those when available. Try to adaptive swarm in between combat or when you're energy starved. Adaptive swarm is not for mid-combat when you have other more pressing buttons to use. Adaptive swarm is something that you have to generate before and after combat. So for talents, this is a core raid build that you can use. The key components here that you want to be looking at are Adaptive Swarm, Feral Frenzy, and Convoke. Everything else should more or less be pretty obvious. For AoE and Mythic Plus, I'm going to show you 2 different builds. One's a very simplistic build for people that don't really want to have to stress about the complexities of Feral, and then I'll have a more advanced regular build for those of you that want to reach Feral's maximum potential. So this is a simplistic build. It will get the job done and it will perform very decent numbers, and it's very simple to use. Note that you're not running Merciless Claws, you're instead running Tireless Energy. This is going to help you feel less energy starved. You're also running Lion Strength instead of Blood Talons, which means you don't have this proc that you're constantly having to track with the rest of your rotation, and you can just play. Instead of Adaptive Swarm and Unbridled Swarm, you'd instead be running Carnivorous Instinct, which is just going to give you flat burst and just be way more easy to manage, because you only have to worry about your Tiger's Fury duration, rather than spreading swarms on all these targets. You're still running Convoke. You're not going to run Feral Frenzy. In keys, you could drop one CI and you could take Feral Frenzy if you wanted a little bit more single target and a little bit more on-demand burst. That's definitely a reasonable choice. Everything else should make sense. Now for the class tree, you want to aim to take your strong defensives, as well as your utility, and most importantly, your damage buff abilities. Your damage buff abilities are going to be coming from, obviously, Rake, Thrash, Rip. You can grab Grievous Wounds here, which increases all your bleed damage. You can grab Killer Instinct here, which gives you 6% physical damage. Primal Fury is going to give you more combo points when you crit. You then have Instincts of the Claw, which is going to buff your Ferocious Bite. You then have Circle of the Wild, which is going to be physical damage dealt by your abilities increased by 5%. Sorry, you have Lycara's Teachings, which is 6% stat. While in cat form, you're going to gain additional crit. Now, there are a couple additional nodes that you can take, which will technically buff your damage. If you're ever running Lunar Inspiration here, which is Moonfire, sometimes you'll run it in Raid, particularly if you're playing Wildstalker hero talent instead. But this Moonfire buff and the magic damage and damage and healing increased by 6%. These will both buff your Lunar Inspiration. So if you're running that, technically your Convoke is also going to Moonfire. It's going to be very negligible overall in, say, Mythic Plus. In Raid, it will be quite a nice little damage buff to your Lunar Inspiration if you are running it. If you're not running it, you can just opt for additional defensives or utility. In terms of utility, the key things here to grab are just grabbing your Dispel, your Kick, Soothe or Cyclone, depending on the dungeon or the scenario. Generally, these aren't needed in Raid, and it's more so just Mythic Plus or PvP. You grab Stampeding Roar, and you can even make it a 1-minute Stampeding Roar here if you grab this improved Stampeding Roar talent. You have Typhoon, and then you can grab Vortex or Mass Entanglement. You then have Hibernate, which, again, has very niche uses. Maybe in Mythic Plus, again, not so much in Raid. Very niche uses there. If you guys want, I can do a video on niche uses of Cyclone and Hibernate and where these things might be good to use. But that's it for the class tree. In terms of the damage overview, Feral's damage on PTR is looking very strong. It's looking solid. Time will tell if it can and will be meta. Has strong single target when in a pure single target build. So if you're in Raid and you can just streamline spec yourself for Raid, then this single target's very good. However, it's going to struggle when you have to choose between a more well-rounded AoE build, and you're going to lose some of that single target potential. So say if you're in Mythic Plus, where you're sort of spec'd for a little bit of single target, a little bit of AoE, your single target's not really going to shine, because you're losing things like Feral Frenzy, potentially. In Mythic Plus, you'll see Feral reach its full potential in AoE scenarios, when mobs live long enough for our bleeds to effectively take hold. So if things are dying in like that, Feral's not going to be as strong as, say, Ret Paladin or Demon Hunter. But when things live a decent amount of time, Feral's going to, and you have that chance to set up and ramp correctly, then Feral's going to do some really good damage. Currently, Rip is doing the vast majority of our overall damage as well in Mythic Plus, and I would imagine, hopefully in Raid, though I still gotta wait for it to release. I've done some PTR testing, but we've got to wait and see a little bit more. Overall, this is great for the big bleed believers to see Rip doing so much damage. It's doing like 24% of my overall. The next best thing is doing like 13%. So you just see this nice long bar of Rip at the overall when the dungeon's done. I think Feral will perform well in low keys and high keys, but it's probably going to struggle with group invites due to its poor public perception. However, because of PTR at the moment, people have been bigging up Feral. So we might see that if Feral's decently strong and we can reverse that negative perception from the public, then we should be in good hands. We'll have to wait and see if it's going to be like meta in any way. And honestly, the aim should never be to want to be meta. It should be, I just want my spec to pump and be able to get invited to keys. Obviously, that's easier as meta, but you have a target on your back when you're meta. So it's nice to be the third best spec in the game. No one's looking at you, but you're still getting invited. So, this would be the DK, the Frost DK in the current season. Everyone's looking at the Enhance, everyone's looking at the Org. No one said anything about the Frost DK. So yeah, that's the situation with Feral. I'm very much looking forward to this season. For those of you that are interested, I'm going to be raiding in a very high-level guild, well, top 200, 2-day-a-week guild, so very solid. They're called Ascendant, so going to be raiding with them. I'm going to be playing Feral and Balanced Druid in Raid. I'm going to be playing Feral and Balanced Druid in Mythic Plus. I have to maintain 2 characters for Raid early on for splits. So if you come into stream, don't be sad if you see me on Balance. I haven't quit Feral. I'm going to be playing both. And I've got plenty more plans to come, but I'll save that for another time in another video. Hopefully this has been very helpful. See you guys in the next one. If you have any questions, please comment down below or let me know on stream or Discord. Take care.